Hey, and welcome back to Jesse's Shed. Today I've got something a little bit different. You might not have seen one of these before. It's a Yamaha YDS-5. It's a 1968 model, and I'm really excited about getting to do this one up. The story behind this bike, it was my father's bike. He picked it up from an old guy out west that had just sat it in his shed for years, hadn't ridden it, and it was just rotting away. My father picked it up, brought it back down to Brisbane, sat it in his shed, and never used it either. I've bugged him for years about fixing it up. He's got other projects, he's just not interested anymore, so he finally has given it to me and said that it's mine to do up and ride. So it's going to be a fantastic little bike to restore. Now, when these came out, these were sort of the pinnacle of technology. Before this, you had to mix your oil, you had to pre-mix it, put it in the tank. These came out with the oil injection system, and I'll put a link to some of the old brochures, but these were considered revolutionary. You've got a tank, oil flows down into a little pump, that injects it into the barrels and mixes with the fuel and lubricates the engine. This meant that you could stop carrying oil with you if you were riding anywhere. The fact that the tank was so large, you could do multiple fuel tanks of petrol for one tank of oil, so your range was greatly increased. And it just made the bike become generally a commuter bike, where before that they were just a luxury thing and really unreliable and would break down a lot. Yamaha wasn't the only one to do this. You had Kawasaki making the Mach 1 and Mach 3. Suzuki did the T500 and the T250. Honda had already moved into 4-strokes, so they didn't really worry too much about this for their road bikes. And then you had your English and your American bikes that was just unreliable junk. So if you wanted something reliable, you came to a Yamaha, a Suzuki, or a Kawasaki, or a Honda. It's a very small bike. As I said, you look, I'm not huge, and this thing looks tiny against me, but it's a lot of fun. It's a 250cc. For the size of it, it's got heaps of power. Yeah, you don't see them a lot, and the reason for that is they're incredibly dangerous to ride. We've got drum brakes front and back. We got the old shocks that are just oil and springs, and they're sloppy as. Yeah, there's nothing really in the way of technology or safety on it. Now, the bike itself is actually in really good condition. It's everything's there. The fairings are there, all of these little covers. The two that I am missing, sadly, is the front. I'm going to have to try and find some replacements for that, either some old stock or possibly even get them made. They're made out of metal, so it wouldn't be too hard to have something fashioned out. The Yamaha signs are obviously gone on it, so I'm going to have to try and source some of them as well. But apart from that, everything else is there and everything else is original. Something that's really cool about this bike, and it's what actually drew my father to it, this sign here, the Tom Byrne PTY, this was one of the main dealers in New South Wales back in the late 60s, early 70s. Wentworth Avenue. It was sort of the strip you went to get the cool bikes, or the latest Japanese bikes that had come out. Yeah, it was the place to be if you were a teenage guy looking for a new bike. So that being there is ultra rare, and the fact that even the speedo and everything is still working. It's an Australian delivered bike, but it's in miles per hour. So you can see it's got 29,827 miles on it, and they're all original. The gauges themselves are very basic. You've got a neutral light, charge light. These have a generator in them. I'll show you that in a minute, but the generator is used as actually a starter as well. And that was a little bit unique about the Yamaha. It was an electric start bike. Other than that, RPM and a headlight lamp. That's it. Another cool feature actually is this is a steering dampener. On a bike this small, you wouldn't think you'd need it, but apparently they were actually quite handy. So yeah, this is that little pump on the other side that the line feeds back to for the oil injection system. It's a dual carb bike. You've got to balance your carbs on it. It goes into 2 barrels, 2 spark plugs. We've got a air filter back here, and then that's our filler point. Beautiful big exhausts. They're always completely fine on the inside because the amount of oil that pours out of them. This thing's not been started in years, and you can see it's just still sitting there wet with oil. It drips oil everywhere at the moment, so I think all of the seals in the engine are going to have to get replaced. But my basic plan for it is completely strip the bike back, take everything off it back to a bare frame. The frame itself looks very good. It's grimy, but it's not chipped. There's no surface rust, nothing like that. So I think the frame may be fine. We'll take the engine out. I'll get that bead blasted so that it comes up nice and shiny again. Take all the barrels, the heads off, check out what the pistons are looking like on it. And I think I will split the cases and take a look at the gear system inside. The gears on these were quite unreliable. It had a tendency to jump out of gear if you revved it too hard on a lot of these models. So I'll take a look at that. And after that, it's just going to be re-chroming, repainting, tidying everything up. Obviously needs new tyres. You look at the amount of splits in that, and it's very similar on the front over here. It's actually worse on the front. We'll check the brakes. They're going to have a drum system that we'll have to do a new service on. And yeah, then slowly just put it all back together. The paint's completely cactus on this, unfortunately, so that's going to have to get all stripped back. The tank itself is still holding fuel by the looks of it, so that'll be nice if it is. Yeah, you're going to have to paint all of these and bring it back to its former glory, and then ride the thing. So I think one of my biggest problems with this is going to be parts. If anyone knows anything about these bikes or wants to know anything about them, please comment and let me know. If you know where to source parts for these or have some parts yourself, please let me know, because I don't think it's going to be easy for some of those rarer bits like this and decals and things. And yeah, just if you want to know any more, if you want to see a particular part of it stripped down, just comment, let me know. So if you want to follow along with the strip down and rebuild of this bike, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. I'm going to have lots more videos coming out on it, plus all the other cars that I'm working on currently. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.